Hearing to order. South Coast Air Quality Management District v. Chiquita Canyon Landfill LLC, facility ID number 119219. Mr. Clerk, first we have a member of the hearing board that's participating remotely, Ms. Verdugo Peralta. Was your location posted timely pursuant to the Brown Act?
Yes, it was.
And are there any individuals present with you at your location?
Not right now, no.
Thank you very kindly. Note for the record, the location has been published and is on the agenda. If anyone is interested in leaving here and driving there, be my guest. All right, we have a couple of folks at least one who signed up to provide public, she wants to serve as a public witness, and we'll get you in a second. I did want to ask Mr. Clerk, are there any individuals online to provide evidentiary testimony or general public comment?
None with their hand raised.
Okay, hold on one second. And other than Ms. Frowling, are there any individuals in the audience who would like to sign card? Okay. So
We just had one raise their hand.
Okay, very well. So that individual's name?
Susie Evans?
Okay, Ms. Evans, are you providing public comment, or are you providing evidentiary testimony? Would you like to serve as a witness?
Evidentiary testimony.
Okay, very well. So why don't both of you raise your right hand, stand and raise your right hand? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and just provide the oath of swearing all the witnesses? Thank you. Okay, do you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very kindly. You may take your seats. Ms. Evans, did you hear the oath and did you accept? Ms. Evans, did you take the oath?
I did.
All right. So we'll go ahead and take Ms. Evans first. Now, understand, Ms. Evans, that you are going to provide evidentiary testimony, and you can be questioned by the petitioner, the respondent, and members of the hearing board. Are you okay with that? Say it again.
Yes, I am.
Okay, very well. So why don't you go ahead and provide your testimony? State your name for the record.
Susie Evans, Valverde resident for over 20 years. I have been rapidly declining in my health with the raspy voice. I am on oxygen now. I really can't do much of anything. And that has occurred mostly in the last 2.5 years. This stench comes in my house. No matter what I do, I have 4 air purifiers running. I would be there, except that I don't think my little scooter that gets me around would get there, just like in downtown LA. I'm better off doing it from home. I can't go outside without smelling it. And even if I get away for a couple hours, it doesn't get any better because I know I have to come home. I can't live my life in retirement as I expected. My grandson was here for a week and we were supposed to be doing a lot of things, but because I couldn't, he was stuck in the house with us. He had 5 bloody noses while he was here, and one of them was a gusher. His other grandparents had his nose cauterized so he wouldn't have bloody noses. I am sick and tired of the powers to be allowing this to continue. We told everybody in 2017 not to expand the dump, but we were ignored by LA County Board of Supervisors, as we are being ignored again. I don't know what they think they're doing by just allowing them to play around up there, but it is 24/7 and the VOCs go up and our pain and suffering gets worse. The VOCs rarely go down below 100. And I understand that VOCs are 50 are okay. Any questions?
Is that the conclusion of your testimony, Ms. Evans?
Well, yeah, kind of.
Okay, you have 48 seconds remaining, so I'd rather you complete it if you're so inclined. And if not, then we'll go ahead and ask the petitioner to respond to the members of the hearing board if they have any questions of you.
You can
All
go
right.
for it.
Okay, on the petitioner side, any questions of Ms. Evans?
This is Catherine Roberts for the South Coast AQMD. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Evans. I have no questions.
Respondent?
We have no questions. Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, members of the hearing board. All right, thank you very kindly, Ms. Evans, for your public testimony.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Frowling, would you please come to the microphone? Turn the microphone on. Yes, right there. All right, why don't you just simply state your name? Yes, please press down and kind of move it up a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Why don't you state your name for the record?
Okay. My name is Carrie, Kerry, Frohling, Frohling. I'm here to testify that since January 1st, when the landfill closed, first of all, I've lived in Castaic since 2006. But since the landfill closed on January 1st, I think we had a few days of relief. And then when they start messing with the landfill, the things start getting worse again. We had high levels of benzene on several occasions. And the H2S and the odors in the community are still going on, even with the landfill being closed. They have MS monitors 1 through 13, and I look at them daily. The 13 one is only H2S, and I'm not sure why that is. It's been very difficult for my neighbors in Valverde and in Castaic. We almost daily smell. We get the health issues of trembling and headaches, migraines, nosebleeds. One of our neighbors has had a nosebleed that comes out of her eyes. It was that severe. And we need some help. There with the Department of Toxic Services telling the landfill that they have to put in a barrier. From what I understand, this has never really been done before, and we don't really know if it's going to work. But while they're doing it, they're going to be disturbing old trash, and they'll have to move the gas lines and do more of the well drillings to measure the temperatures. And during that time, like last summer, it was horrific. It was horrific for us. There were days when we couldn't breathe. It was so bad. And we really need our neighborhoods to be relocated. And we need a health registry and a health clinic. People are getting sick. A lot of them don't have really good insurance. I am one of the fortunate ones who does have good insurance. And I've been having abnormal blood results. in my latest labs. And it's scary. I've had cancer twice. And I don't want anybody else to have to go through that. You know, going through chemo, 12 rounds of chemo, going through radiation, and then, you know, and then I have a friend who came down with breast cancer just last year, and she had been declared free before, and then she suddenly has a stage 4, and it's just awful. The chemicals that are coming out of the landfill with the benzene and the toluene, some of the monitors measure the acrolein, but not all of them. You know, it varies which monitors these chemical gases are coming out of. It varies by the wind. I mean, in January and February, we had the winds coming from the north to the south, so they were blowing them away from our community. But there are still days when it blows right into our community.
Okay, Ms. Froling, I'm sorry, Ms. Froling, but your time has expired, and I
Okay,
do thank you. You drove a very long way, and we're very much appreciative to have you here this morning.
well, we appreciate that you guys listen to us. Well, you know, I feel like this government agency has been the most responsive out of all of them, and we really appreciate that. And all of the inspectors who come out.
Well, thank you. So at this time, we're going to ask that if the district has any questions of you,
Okay,
and then we'll ask that if the respondent has questions, and then we'll have the hearing board members ask if they're so inclined. Ms. Roberts?
Thank you, Ms. Froling, for your testimony today. I have no questions for you.
Ms.
I have no
Morgan?
questions. Thank you for being here.
Members of the hearing board, Mr. Balakapalan.
Morning, Ms. Prawling. I heard you mention MS 1 to 13, and I didn't, just want clarification. Because I did see MS 13, and because I would have associated with the, the MS 13 gang or whatever, but I think it's 1 to 12, you know. So is
The
there
13
13 that you say which only monitored H2S? Because I didn't see it in any of the reports, that's why I'm asking.
okay. This is something why we need a single dashboard so that you guys can all get the information. But yes, there is an MS-13 at the middle school. And if you go to the EPA site that has, it has it there. And it's up on the northern part at the middle school.
Okay, thank you.
And it should be public for everybody.
All right, any additional questions of the hearing board? Okay, thank you very kindly, Ms. Froling.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move to the exhibits, which are many, voluminous. So today, the district proffered a host of exhibits. Exhibit number 66 is the order complaints, Q1 2023 versus Q1 2025. Exhibit 64 is an NOV P80892. Exhibit 68 is another NOV P81017. Exhibit number 69 is the surface emissions results compliance inspection dated 12/11/2024. Exhibit 70, photographs compliance inspections December 11th, 2024. Exhibit 71, excerpts from Bolton condition 12, subset F, presentations December 2024 through March 2025, and then exhibit number 72. And that was 71, by the way, the excerpts from Bolton condition. Then you have exhibit 72, charter proposed modifications and new conditions. Ms. Roberts, that concludes your exhibits, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very well. All right, Ms. Morgan, your exhibits, just want to make sure we're numbering this correctly.
Yes, and one housekeeping item up front, we are withdrawing the exhibits of the declaration of Robert Dick and the declaration of Patrick Sullivan. Those are labeled III and J.
Okay, so just so we're clear, the index you provided your GGG, which is the declaration of Miss,
Viswanathan.
yeah, I hate to mispronounce folk name, but I thank you for leaning in on that. Then there's the HHH is the declaration of Neil Bolton. KKK, God, wow, what an exhibit. KKK compliance chart. LLL, December 2024, State of the Landfill Report dated December 2023, 2024. MMM is a technical addendum to the State of the Landfill Report dated February 19th, 2025. Then you have NNN is Amy Wong, Los Angeles Cancer Surveillance Program, Chiquita Canyon Cancer Risk Assessment Report, which is dated March 11th, 2025. That's this document from USC, correct? All right.
Yes.
Then you have OOO, Department of Toxic Substances Control, Imminent and Substantial Endangerment Determination and Order, April 1st, 2025. Is that include the?
Correct.
Okay, very well. All right, Mr. Pearman is going to provide a brief excerpt from the pre-hearing conference, which was held last week. So I'll go and turn the floor over to Mr. Pearman.
Thank you, sir. Before I do that, a question about the Peter exhibit, Mike, the Declaration of Neil Bolton, which is now HHH. It mentions attached are exhibits including A, B, and C, but they're not attached. Particularly A was the closure letter. You know if the closure letter at least is somewhere else in the material?
Yes, it was submitted electronically, and our discussion with the clerk's office, we understood that we just have one copy of all of the exhibits. Otherwise, they're quite voluminous.
Right, and so she's referencing the thousands of documents for which I'd ask for them to bring so that the public would have a right to scrutinize if in fact the public desire to review said documents.
Yes,
Is that correct, Ms. Morgan?
Pardon. To clarify, what you have printed are the declarations themselves. The exhibits, the hard copies are available in the corner and are in your emails.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
All right.
So as the chair said, we did have a pre-hearing conference on April 11th with the parties. And in that, it was discussed that the purpose of today's hearing would discuss what were stipulated conditions modifying the order. There are still some things that are in dispute, and if so, those will be resolved hopefully on June 4th. And there are also some witness availability issues that lend to decision for this kind of split consideration. At this point, we expect that the district would have one witness primarily, and Chiquita would make at least two people available if need be by questioning. Thank you.
All right, so to that end, we really want to keep the hearing today very much narrow and very much focused on the matters that are not being disputed. I just want to echo his sentiment so that we can be able to move efficiently. We got folk like Ms. Froling, they need to understand that we do care and that we want to move this process effortlessly, but we want to bifurcate what we're doing today versus what we're going to do June 4th. So I'm going to turn the floor over to our good friend, Ms. Roberts, who will provide opening statements.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the hearing board. The matter for this morning involves two actions that the district is requesting the board consider in this Chiquita Canyon case. The first is consideration of a set of stipulated modifications to the order for abatement that was just marked as proposed exhibit number 72. The modifications and new conditions proposed in this exhibit are generally narrow, but nevertheless, they are still important to strengthen the order for abatement, to address additional violations, and to increase requirements to limit odor-causing emissions, which are still causing a public nuisance that has been ongoing for now 23 months. The parties will provide today a limited and more streamlined status update sufficient for the board to make good cause findings necessary to adopt the modifications. As a reminder, because these modifications are fully stipulated, the board does not need to make any other findings. The second question before the board this morning is when to set the next status hearing. As Vice Chair Pearman indicated, we did have a pre-hearing conference where this is disputed by the parties. Fundamentally, the hearing today is more limited because the parties have reached an agreement in light of recent administrative action by the Department of Toxic Substances Control to defer a full status update and to defer the board having before it to consider additional proposed new conditions to address the deteriorating state of this landfill. Fundamentally, the parties disagree over what the data shows, whether it is showing this reaction causing the violations improving, as Chiquita contends, or deteriorating, expanding, and worsening, as South Coast AQMD, as well as several other regulatory agencies have determined. Because that question is so fundamental, the district is requesting the earliest reasonable date, which is June 4th. This would afford Chiquita more than the 30-day extension it actually requested of the district to address obligations from the new DTSC order. It would additionally is a date that all parties and council have confirmed that they are available and is available on the board's calendar. And it is the earliest otherwise reasonable date. Chiquita is requesting a longer delay, pushing the matter out to either the second or third week of July. Chiquita has raised before the hearing board several arguments as to why it feels those later dates are necessary, but none of those arguments hold water. The vice chair at our pre-hearing conference has already rejected one of those arguments in finding that a June hearing would in no way deprive Chiquita of due process, and this board should affirm that determination in setting a June hearing. Chiquita has also suggested that waiting for finalized work plans from DTSC would prevent conflicts between the DTSC orders and this abatement order. But the abatement order already in condition 49 expressly provides a mechanism to ensure and avoid any conflicts with any other government agency. And the new DTSC order expressly directs that work plans need to be consistent with this board's order. There is not now, nor has there ever been any conflict among the agencies as to the violations and redressing them. Each of these agencies works within its own sphere to address violations within its jurisdiction, but all of them coordinate as a multi-agency critical action team known as an MCAT to address Chiquita Canyon matters. Fundamentally, allowing Chiquita Canyon's violations of hazardous waste laws to entitle it to a delay of abating air quality violations is unfair to the public because it is the public who bears the burden of all of these environmental law violations. Lastly, Chiquita does raise concerns of not all of its witnesses are available at every day and opposes any hearing date unless all parties' witnesses are available for the entirety of 2 consecutive days. But this board has never imposed that kind of stringency. This board has, in fact, imposed a lot of flexibility. We see that today with Ms. Verdugo Peralta. We can accommodate hearing witnesses remotely if they are unable to travel in person. We can accommodate taking witnesses out of turn if they are only available for a portion of the day. This board has accommodated setting hearings for non-consecutive days if that's what's best for the most people for scheduling purposes. This board should use that flexibility as it has in the past, and it has done so without any detriment to hearing all the evidence. It should do so here to set the most expedited hearing date possible, which is June 4th. And the district asks this board to set that for the return hearing date following consideration of the stipulated modifications, which the district submits there is certainly good cause to adopt today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Good morning, Chairman Ali and members of the hearing board. We are here today for a status update on Chiquita's implementation of the stipulated order and to present to you additional proposed modifications to that order. We're pleased that through the diligent work of the district staff and lawyers and Chiquita, we once again have a consent order for your consideration today. We were last before you in November. Since that time, Chiquita has achieved key milestones in its implementation of the many mitigation measures required by the stipulated order. In December 2024, Chiquita completed the West Slope Tow Drain Installation Project, also referred to as the West Slope Excavation Project. You will hear today from one of Chiquita's witnesses, Mr. Neil Bolton, how this project has successfully redirected leachate on the west slope, thus reducing related odors and seeps. Shortly thereafter, Chiquita completed the installation of the approximately 46-acre geosynthetic cover. This was a major project. The cover, placed directly on the landfill, reduces fugitive surface emissions and thus the potential for odors. Chiquita also achieved the January 6th, 2025 deadline for density of vertical landfill gas wells within the Condition 9A reaction area, installing 216 wells over the course of a year. Mr. Vidya Viswanathan, Chiquita's landfill gas well field expert, will provide an update on overall well field expansion and its importance toward mitigating the reaction. Ms. Viswanathan will also testify about major milestones Chiquita has achieved in leachate extraction. In the first quarter of 2025, Chiquita achieved an approximate 60% increase in the amount of leachate it extracted as compared to the first quarter of 2024. There are now nearly 150 pumps installed and operational in the landfill, and 100 new pumps being prepped for installation. About half of the currently installed pumps and all of the new pumps are custom designed for specific wells after a lengthy R&D process to ensure their compatibility with Chiquita's leachate. Due to these immense efforts by Chiquita, odor complaints have decreased substantially in the first quarter of 2025 as compared to the first quarter of 2024. While there is more work to be done, substantial strides made to date are a positive sign that we are moving in the right direction. Since our November hearing, there have also been other notable events that are important for this hearing board to consider. First, the landfill has closed permanently to the acceptance of waste. As of January 1st, 2025, Chiquita no longer accepts outside waste and has no plans to do so in the future. As you will hear from Mr. Bolton, Chiquita is working with its regulators to prepare for formal regulatory closure. Additionally, on April 1st, Chiquita received an order from the Department of Toxic Substances Control requiring additional measures relating to the reaction, including expansion of the geosynthetic cover. As the hearing board knows, there's a complicated overarching regulatory landscape at Chiquita, which includes orders from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the local enforcement agency acting for CalRecycle, and the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. The new DTSC order will add to the many requirements at the site, but the technical details remain unknown. 2 work plans are due to DTSC in May, and 1 is due in July. Once DTSC has reviewed and responded, we will have better certainty as to what exactly DTSC will be requiring for Chiquita. As to scheduling a subsequent hearing, Chiquita, at the direction of the hearing board, has discussed availability with its witnesses and found additional dates in June where at least some witnesses are available, whether in person or virtually. Chiquita has never taken the position that it must have 2 consecutive days for a hearing and is willing at the board's availability and discretion to come up with an arrangement that is suitable so that all parties have their witnesses heard. Chiquita's experts have consistently testified that mitigating the elevated temperature landfill event is a long-term project. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet that can put an end to the reaction. As you will hear today, the landfill has made significant progress in implementing the mitigation measures that will resolve this event. We are seeing notable improvements in odors. Chiquita is committed to continuing to work collaboratively with its regulators, as demonstrated today through the proposed stipulation. We thank the hearing board for your time today and ask the hearing board find good cause to adopt the proposed stipulated modifications and new conditions.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts, your
Thank you,
first
Mr.
witness.
Chair. The district would call Inspector Lawrence Israel. Mr. Israel, can I have you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Lawrence, Laurance, Israel, Israel.
And did you take the oath this morning?
Yes, I did.
Can you remind us what is your position with the South Coast AQMD?
I'm a supervising air quality inspector in the Toxics and Waste Management Group of Office of Compliance and Enforcement, OCE, at South Coast Air Quality.
How long have you been with the Office of Compliance Enforcement?
2 months shy of 38 years.
And in that time, you've testified multiple times for this matter, for the order for abatement in this case. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you're generally familiar with this facility?
yes.
Okay. So I want to kind of start with a high level kind of status update of where we are in 2025. Can you tell us how many total odor complaints did the district receive against Chiquita Canyon landfill for January of 2025?
Approximately 168.
And how about for February of 2025?
Approximately 660.
How about March of 2025?
Approximately 788 complaints.
Can you tell me how many notices of violation did the South Coast AQMD issue for violation of public nuisance in each of those 3 months?
For January 2025, there were 3 public nuisance violations served. In February, there were 9 public nuisance violations, and in March, there were 6 public nuisance violations.
So just focusing on those complaints that led to violations for public nuisance, can you describe in general terms, what were the strength of odors that AQMD inspectors have been confirming on that 1 to 5 scale that we've talked about in prior testimony for odor strength?
So our inspectors have consistently been detecting anywhere from distinct, which would be on a scale of 1 to 5, 3 out of 5, up to 5 out of 5, very strong odors in the community.
Can you describe a little bit for us, what is the kind of description of the odors that we're able to verify for these complaints in the last several months?
So for the first quarter, in reviewing and speaking with all the inspectors that have conducted the complaint investigations, the typical description of what they're detecting is kind of a sour, spoiled milk odor, which we've detected since this reaction has been ongoing. So that's more in line with the reaction landfill gas odors, and that's primarily the odors. There's some instances where there's chemical odors that are detected, and some of our inspectors also complain of detecting some leachate odors, but it's mostly the reaction gas odors.
Thank you. So I think we've had in prior testimony, we've characterized sort of wind patterns across seasons. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
And some of those wind patterns, we describe them as favorable in the sense that they can limit the impact of odors. Is that right?
Yes.
Are winds out of the north, meaning they're blowing from the north to the south, are these generally among what we would consider those less impactful for odor type winds?
Yes.
Has that same prior testimony, when we talk about characterizing prior winds, have we also associated a specifically higher wind speeds as also among the characteristics we would look for favorable wind conditions?
Yes.
So is it correct that we've previously stated, particularly winds out of the north, particularly above about 5 miles per hour, those are kind of the best case of favorable wind conditions, meaning they limit the impact of odors? Is that correct?
Correct. From what we've seen, that's more favorable.
In general, have we also associated those favorable wind patterns with specific seasons of the year where they're more common than other seasons?
Yes.
And are those generally the favorable wind seasons, the winter months rather than spring or summer months?
Yes.
So the early months of 2025, in addition to the normal winters, we were also in 2025 got some pretty strong, otherwise not normal wind speeds. Is that right?
Yes,
In fact, our region, and including Los Angeles County, where Chiquita Canyon is located, that was actually the subject of an emergency declaration from the governor of California due to high wind speeds and associated wildfire danger. Is that correct?
regrettably, yes.
So based on how we've previously characterized it, looking at above 5 miles per hour, would we consider that the wind speeds that declaration and wildfire risk are associated potentially even more favorable in terms of limiting odor, however regrettable they are for other conditions?
Yes,
So in the first 3 months of 2025, that first quarter that we walked through of odor complaints and violations, did South Coast AQMD ever confirm odors even when we were getting winds that are coming out of the north?
yes,
Was South Coast AQMD compliance inspectors ever able to confirm nuisance level odors, meaning they resulted in a notice of violation, even when wind speeds were at or above 5 miles per hour?
yes, we did.
So is it fair to say that in the first quarter, when we're looking at these numbers for right now, the nuisance violations confirmed for the first 3 months of 2025 are coming despite favorable winds and meteorology generally?
Yes, it appears so.
Okay. I want to step back a little bit from the complaints and ask a little bit about the landfill itself. Have you personally been on site at the landfill since our last hearing in November of 2024?
Yes,
Have you been on site more than once?
yes,
And were you on site to conduct compliance inspections?
yes, on all of those.
Okay. Was one of those compliance inspections on December 11th of 2024?
Yes,
Were you the only one there, or did any inspectors go with you?
no, there was a team of inspectors.
Okay. Did you, on that December 11th inspection, did you get the opportunity to see the reaction area specifically of the landfill?
Yes,
Okay, so I'm actually going to pull up one of the exhibits that has been marked. See if I can do that. So you should have them in front of you in that binder, or you can look at the screen. But this is has been marked as exhibit number 70 that we're looking at. Did you take the photographs in exhibit number 70?
yes, I did.
Were they taken during that December 11th inspection on site?
Yes,
So this first picture this is showing a portion of what we refer to as this geosynthetic cover over the landfill. Is that right?
correct.
And this is specifically that cover is over the reaction area.
That's correct.
So what seems to be in this picture as we're looking at it is that the cover doesn't seem to be one contiguous material. It seems to have some seams. Is that fair to say of what we're seeing in this picture?
That's correct.
Is this picture representative, generally speaking, of the reaction area geosynthetic cover, or is this the only portion that has seams like this?
Well, there's a number of areas where it's more intact. And this particular area around this gas well, among others.
Could you try again?
Sorry,
You want me to repeat that?
Terry thought we were talking to.
There were other areas that were pretty much intact, and then there are areas that we investigated where there were a lot of cutouts that were repaired, and this is one of those instances. There were a number of those that we observed.
Okay. And I just want to, since we have this picture up, in the back of this picture, sort of in the center of the picture, what we're looking at there is a gas extraction well. Is that right?
Correct.
And so, to your understanding, these gas extraction wells will necessarily also kind of be one other point of a break in the cover, meaning they would extend both above the cover and also go into the ground below the cover.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So in general, we've talked about this cover is required by some other agencies' orders, but also our order for abatement. And generally, the intent for our order for abatement with this cover was to try and limit emissions of landfill gas coming out of the reaction. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I want to take you to the second page of exhibit number 70 and ask you could you describe what are we looking at in this second page in that second image?
Well, this is a photograph I took of a split in the seam of the geomembrane in a particular area that we were monitoring.
Okay, so the current abatement order already has as condition number 30 a requirement for daily inspections of the cover. Is that right?
That's correct.
And they would be specifically looking for things like this, right? Seams or breaks where emissions could escape.
Yes, that is the idea.
So the purpose, in theory, that condition should kind of prevent openings like this one to prevent emissions that could then contribute to odors. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So during this same inspection on December 11th, did your compliance team actually conduct any monitoring to assess, you saw at least one break. Did you assess whether or not there were any emissions?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Sorry. So I'm going to take you to the third picture in exhibit number 70. Is this picture depicting the sort of monitoring that you did during that December 11th inspection?
Yes, that's a picture of two of my inspectors, monitoring team performing surface monitoring. Yes.
So I noticed in this picture, it seems like you are monitoring not just the seam that we were looking at in the second picture, but you're also monitoring around the base of, this is another gas extraction well. Is that right?
That's correct.
And since we have this picture up, can you explain to us, because this is in a term used in one of the stipulated proposed conditions, could you explain while we're looking at this, what exactly is a boot skirt of a gas extraction well?
Well, this is placed around the casing where it comes out of the geomembrane. It's sort of an extension of the geomembrane to prevent surface emissions. And that's been a problem because that's been the location where we have in the past and the present been verifying and measuring surface emissions. So the idea is to prevent, and so it's a way of further enclosing and putting a nice tight seal around the casing where it protrudes up through the geomembrane.
Okay. And since we're looking at your team of inspectors conducting this monitor, can you tell me what kind of instrument are you using or your compliance inspectors using for this type of surface monitoring?
It's one of our TVA's toxic vapor analyzer. It's a FID flame ionization device, and we measure methane emissions from the surface with this instrument.
So for compliance purposes, the landfill is required by Rule 1150.1 to ensure emissions don't exceed a certain level. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you know what that level is in Rule 1150.1?
Well, for this type of survey that we were performing on this date, which is an instantaneous survey, the limit is 500 parts per million.
Okay. So if emissions are detected above that level of 500 parts per million, Rule 1150.1 would also require the landfill to take corrective actions to address those emissions. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to another one of my exhibits. This is exhibit number 69. Sorry, I'm going in the backwards order. So did the compliance team that we were just looking at in that picture, did they actually observe any emissions exceedances above that 500 parts per million limit that we were talking about?
Yes, at numerous locations.
Okay. Were any of those exceedances above 500 parts per million from openings in the landfill's geosynthetic cover that we observed?
Yes,
Were any of them from exceedances above 500 parts per million from any gas wells?
yes.
Okay, just so that we're clear when we're looking at this exhibit number 69, are the gas well locations noted by a CV dash and then a number?
Yes,
So each of those is referring to a certain gas well?
correct.
Okay. So I kind of want you to walk us through on the left-hand column. We have it labeled as reading exceedance of greater than 500 parts per million. Can you explain to us the difference between, for example, that first number is just a number, but the second number down is a percentage?
So the first number, 2,792, is 2,792 parts per million, whereas the second number, 1.31%, would be 1% is 10,000. So this would be 1.3 times 10,000.
So for lawyers who don't like math, just to get a clear understanding, like 5% then would then be 50,000 parts per million?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can you also explain a little bit further down? We see a couple of notations where we see either a high reading or flame out. Can you explain what does a flame out mean?
Well, I think for both of those, flame out, high reading, the instrument takes in too much oxygen, and it's generally, we have where the instrument shuts off at maybe over 50,000 or above parts per million. So it was an exceedingly high emission at that particular well or location on the surface that caused the instrument to take in too much oxygen. It's measuring methane, basically.
So each of the readings that we're seeing in this chart are above the allowable limit in Rule 1150.1. So they require the correction within 10 days under Rule 1150.1. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I'm going to take you to the second page of this same exhibit number 69. Did your compliance team also issue a notice to comply to direct them to take that 10-day corrective action for each of these exceedances?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the parties are in this case stipulating to a new condition that would require inspection separately from the existing condition of just inspecting daily the geosynthetic cover, but specifically to inspect seams and seals around wells every week. Is that right?
Correct.
And so based on your observations during inspections like that December 11th one, is this condition, in your opinion, useful to try and limit or either prevent or detect earlier surface emissions that we're observing even in areas that are covered by that geosynthetic cover?
Absolutely. I would think it's a good condition.
So you mentioned that this is not the only time you've been on site at the landfill. You had inspected the landfill a few times since our November hearing. Were you also on site February 27th of this year?
Yes.
Did you observe during that inspection any new or additional equipment being installed on the site?
Yes.
What equipment did you observe?
We observed that a second thermal oxidizer, acronym TOX, TOX, had been placed and set up on the landfill site, very close to the reaction area near tank farm number 9.
Did you ask anybody during your inspection from Chiquita Canyon about when this equipment was actually first brought on site?
Yes.
And what did they tell you?
We were advised that the equipment had been brought on site the day before, around February 26th.
And did you confirm whether or not Chiquita Canyon had obtained a permit to construct or had submitted any kind of permit application for this new thermal oxidizer?
We asked them at the time and they did not provide us an answer of yes or no.
Okay. At the end of that specific inspection, did your compliance team determine this was a violation of district rules?
Yes,
Did the compliance team issue this notice of violation that I'm showing, which is has been marked as exhibit 68 for failure to obtain the required permits for this equipment?
right. After we confirmed that there was no application submitted, the notice of violation was issued.
Do you know if there has been any application since that time for this specific equipment?
For that specific equipment, with my conversations with E&P Engineering and Permitting, is that no, they have not received an application for that specific equipment.
If Chiquita were to operate separately from installing this thermal oxidizer, and they do so without first obtaining permits from the district, would that constitute a violation of any district rules?
Yes.
Which rules?
203, operating equipment without a permit, which would also be part of their Title V permit. So there'd be a count under 3002, which is Title V provisions.
When you were on site during the inspection, did Chiquita, as representative, indicate they were in fact planning to operate this equipment?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they had told us that they, well, on February 27th, yes. To answer your question.
So the parties among the stipulated modifications we have today is a new condition requiring Chiquita Canyon to submit specifically applications for this piece of equipment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Ultimately, does adding conditions like this, submitting permit applications, help them eventually come back into compliance with district rules like 201, 203, or 3002?
Yes.
Okay. During the same February 27th inspection that we've been talking about, did you have the opportunity to observe any of the tanks or tank farms, as Chiquita Canyon kind of calls them, for holding leachate?
Yes.
The existing order in condition 78 that was adopted in August of 2024 had certain requirements, including a requirement to place a liner underneath the leachate tanks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That condition adopted in August required the liner to be installed within 120 days of the order. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when exactly was that required?
Well, it should have been installed around Christmas time.
Okay, so as of February 27th, when you were on site and you saw these leachate tanks, did they have any liners installed beneath the leachate tanks pursuant to condition number 78?
No, they did not. We inspected both Tank Farm 7 and Tank Farm 9, and there was no liner underneath any of the storage tanks.
So I'm going to pull up another exhibit. This is exhibit number 67. So did the compliance office then determine that this state was also a violation of the order for abatement?
Yes.
And did the compliance office issue this NOV that has been marked as exhibit number 67 to list, among other violations, violations of condition number 78?
Yes.
Okay. The parties today are stipulating to a modification of that same condition that would ultimately extend the deadline for when the Chiquita Canyon will put a liner underneath the leachate tanks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But even with the parties' modification today, we are not removing the requirement. They will still be required to ultimately put a liner under leachate tanks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you've walked us through kind of the state of the landfill on site a couple of times. I kind of want to zoom back out a little bit and help us understand some perspective. And I'm going to bring up, this is exhibit number 66. And I want to kind of you to help us understand those 2025 complaint numbers and put them in a little bit of perspective for us. Is this chart showing the number of odor complaints received against Chiquita in the first 3 months of 2 different years, 2023 and then 2025?
Yes.
So you've testified that you've been with South Coast AQMD for more than 3 decades now. Through that assignment, are you familiar with Chiquita Canyon landfill and the state of that landfill, even in those first 3 months of 2023?
Yes,
Okay. Did you conduct any on-site inspections or investigations in the nearby community in those first few months of 2023?
I don't recall that I was in the community during those months.
Did you verify that those are the correct numbers of complaints that were received by the district against Chiquita Canyon landfill, specifically complaining of odors for the first 3 months of 2023?
Yes, I assigned them, so I am familiar with those.
Were any notices of violation for causing a odor public nuisance issued during those first 3 months of 2023?
No,
So those first 3 months of 23, that actually represents prior to the start of the current ongoing public nuisance. Is that right?
that's correct.
Just to give us kind of a timeline, when was the first notice of violation? What month for nuisance relating to the current odor public nuisance that we have at Chiquita Canyon?
It was in mid-May 2023.
Okay. So we've discussed the conditions of 2025. We talked a little bit about meteorology. So I want to do the same sort of thing for 2023. In January of 2023, the facility was already seeing high levels of DMS or dimethyl sulfide, and in fact actually came in for a variance to this hearing board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we've since determined through a number of investigations that dimethyl sulfide is actually a symptom of the current reaction happening at Chiquita Canyon. Is that your understanding?
Yes,
So we know from those conclusions that even these early months of 2023, prior to when a public nuisance was occurring, the reaction at Chiquita Canyon landfill was happening. Is that correct?
yes.
So because we're also looking at the same 3 months, January, February, March for 2023, do we have the same prevalence of these favorable wind patterns that we have been talking about for 2023 as we've discussed for 2025?
Yes.
Anything that you recall that stands out in terms of meteorology that could potentially lessen the impact of odors for 2023 that you recall during those months?
Well, what I recall about the first quarter of 2023 is there was a significant amount of rain in the South Coast Basin. It was way above normal. This is not an upslope area as we have more in the North Valley. So they get more rain, but there were a number of rain episodes. And I recall from my discussions with the community, the prevailing wind patterns on other days were primarily from the north. So we weren't really getting any odor complaints, and things were fairly quiet.
So in your review of complaints across the years, have you ever noticed that when you have high rains, that could actually lessen the number of odor impacts and lessen the number of complaints you would receive?
Well, in the past, we generally haven't received many odor complaints from the landfill during those periods, during the winter months or when we've had rainy conditions or winds from the north. So it's usually fairly quiet. It has been.
So is it fair to say that both in these first 3 months, 2023 and 2025, it's fair to categorize these as the sort of favorable wind patterns?
Yeah, I would say so, yes.
So I want to look at some other aspects of the site and changes between 2023 and 2025. In 2025, we've talked about this geosynthetic cover. We saw pictures of it. It's installed over about 40 acres of the reaction area currently. Is that correct?
A little more than 40, but that's correct.
Okay. You discussed going on site in February. Was work to install it still ongoing at that point in February of 2025, or had it been completed by the time you were inspecting on site in 2025?
The answer would be no. It had been completed already.
Okay. Was that cover in place at the site between any time in January, February, or March of 2023?
No.
Okay, so in discussing your 2025 inspections, we've talked about there's already one thermal oxidizer. They brought a new one on, but there's one that's been on site for a while in 2025. Is that right?
That's correct. The Zico tox unit.
Was that Zico tox operating on site in January, February, or March of 2023?
No.
Was flare number 3 permanently installed by January of 2025?
Yes.
Was it installed prior by January, February, or March of 2023?
No.
So we talked a little bit about looking at some of those gas wells. We talked, the OA required actually the landfill to roughly triple the number of gas wells specifically installed in the reaction area. Is that right?
Yes.
During your 2025 inspections, was the landfill still actively drilling to get to that number of gas wells, or had they largely completed the active drilling of those wells?
No, when we were out there in February, they had already completed installation of all those gas wells per the OA.
Were all those wells completed in 2023 by January, February, or March of 2023?
No.
So we also talked about leachate, looking at those tanks and the amount of leachate they've been extracting. Did the landfill have the infrastructure, meaning the tanks, those pipes, the lines, at the same amount in 2023 as what you're observing in your 2025 inspections?
No.
So I want to let's talk about outside the reaction then. In those first 3 months of 2023, did the landfill accept any trash from outside vendors?
Yes, the landfill was operating as they normally had been.
In your opinion, as a compliance inspector who regularly inspects for things like odor public nuisances, are trash operations at any landfill at least a potential source for odors?
Absolutely, yes.
So what about 2025? To your knowledge, did they accept any outside trash during any day of 2025?
No.
So to kind of sum up, in this 2 years that we're talking about between 2023 and 2025, they've added a whole range of things designed to limit odors, from gas collection, gas combustion capacity, leachate extraction, covers over the reaction area. Is that correct? Those have all been installed since 2023?
Yes, that is correct.
In fact, by 2025, it seems like you're telling us a lot of those actions covered by the OA, required by them, had actually already been largely completed, at least to some measure. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is correct.
And then in 2025, they also shut down another major potential source of odors on the landfill site in stopping their trash collection. Is that right?
Yes, by December 31st, 2024, they had ceased. So that is correct.
And then we talked about 2025, this first quarter is all in the winter months, favorable wind conditions. And if anything, this year with the historic Santa Ana winds might be even above average of favorable wind conditions. Is that right?
That's correct. It appears that in January, there were numerous back-to-back Santa Ana wind condition events. It covered a lot of January, and then we had rain events since then. So we've had a lot of so-called favorable condition days.
So when we add all of that up in summary, is it fair to say that the first quarter of 2025, at least in terms of limiting the impact of odors, they kind of had a best case scenario?
Yes.
And yet across this same quarter, they've received more than 1,600 complaints and 17 notices of violation for public nuisance. Is that right?
Yes.
But looking at this data, we know from 2023, we can see that at least when we have those favorable winds, like you did say, 2023, those months were favorable. It seems possible that they can have this reaction ongoing and yet be below the threshold for an odor public nuisance. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So you mentioned that the first public nuisance for this matter was in May of 2023. Has this facility had any months between May of 2023 and the end of Q1 of 2025 where they didn't receive at least one notice of violation for public nuisance?
No, there has been no month since May of 2023 where a public nuisance violation has not been verified and confirmed.
So from your experience, is this looking at comparing Q1 of 2025 to Q1 of 2023? Is this a reasonable measuring stick, saying 2023 data is where we need to get to in order to essentially end the odor public nuisance?
I would think so, yes.
And looking ahead, based on your experience across the years inspecting this landfill, do we expect that we will retain favorable meteorology as we head into the late spring and summer months?
Well, if it's anything like the past, it tends to become less and less favorable as we get more towards the summer months, especially with onshore flow, winds from the south almost daily.
Thank you. Those are all my questions for you, Inspector Israel.
Ms. Roberts on cross?
Yes,
I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan.
I knew you were talking to me.
No coffee.
Mr. Israel, a few questions on a couple of the topics that you've covered during your testimony this morning. I want to start with the thermal oxidizer that you discussed that Chiquita brought on site. The purpose of the thermal oxidizer is to process more landfill gas. Is that right?
Correct.
So ultimately the goal would be to reduce fugitive emissions.
Correct.
You also testified about the tank farm and that the tank farm was not lined by the deadline that was in the stipulated order, which is changing by the party stipulations today, correct?
Correct.
Are you familiar with condition 49 of the stipulated order?
I'd have to refresh my.
That's the condition that essentially says if there's a conflict, we can, Chiquita would reach out to the South Coast AQMD to discuss modifications to avoid conflict with other regulations. Is that right?
I mean, I'd have to look at it, but if that's what it is.
Sure. So now we've got condition 49 on the screen. Does this look familiar?
Yeah, but I didn't bring my glasses, so I'd have to look at it from distance is not my best.
Can you read that?
And so I'm looking at the top of the page 70 where it says the conditions in this order shall not in any way restrict or expand the scope of jurisdiction of any agency. If any agency shares jurisdiction, requires respondent to take any action that's inconsistent with this order, respondent shall immediately contact the South Coast AQMD.
Yes, that's what it says.
Are you familiar with the condition 49 notification that Chiquita sent to the district relating to the tank farm and the requirement to line the tank farm?
I am familiar. There was a notification made. Yeah.
And are you familiar with the substance of the notification that because of requirements of other regulatory agencies to relocate the tank farm, in addition to the requirement to expeditiously dewater, Chiquita wasn't able to line by that deadline, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I think we can put condition 49 away. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Israel, you also testified about the TVA monitoring, and there's a phrase used in that exhibit, flame out. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that you testified that that phrase is the result of excess emissions or too high emissions. Is that right?
Yes.
There are other reasons why you could have flame out, correct?
Well, I'm not an expert in the operation of that equipment, but it was exceeding greater than 500 parts per million, and that was really the main goal of the survey. Yeah.
But it said flame out. It didn't give a reading.
Yeah. I kind of questioned that myself, what the reading was. So I had asked the inspector, and they had looked at the instrument just before it had flamed out, and it was like 4 or 5%. So it was above 40, 50,000 parts per million.
What are some of the other reasons you could have flame out?
Well, I don't know if there's something wrong with the instrument, but generally, I've always thought it was something to do with the oxygen. Too much oxygen is drawn in and causes the flame to be extinguished, so it no longer reads.
So the oxygen concentration of the gas, right?
It's possible. It was just 1 or 2 instances that happened, and we had multiple instruments with us. So it wasn't just the one instrument. We just put the highest reading down.
I want to turn to the questions you've been asked this morning by the district about complaint numbers and notices of violation. So you testified about complaint numbers from Q1 of 2023 and Q1 of 2025, correct?
Correct.
And in 2025 Q1, I think you said notices of violation in January, there were 3, in February 9, and in March 6. Is that right?
Yes.
So I'm going to pull up what Exhibit 66. We can share our screen here.
Excuse me, may I just get permission to share screen?
Mr. Israel, while we're pulling this up, are you familiar with how many complaints there were in Q1 of 2024?
Yes.
And how many NOVs were issued in Q1 of 2024?
Yes.
Higher than Q1 of 2025, correct?
Yes.
You've testified that you believe that Q1 of 2025 or you testified that sort of the Q1, the winter months, are favorable wind conditions, right?
Historically, yes.
And you believe that Q1 of 2025 was above average in terms of the favorable conditions?
I believe so.
Are you able to quantify that?
Quantify in which regard?
How much more favorable? What percentage of decrease in complaints is due to the above average conditions?
Well, I don't know if I can say that for sure. If you're going to look at, for example, the first quarter of 2024, when there was no geomembrane installed, when the flare number 3 was just brought online, and there were issues making sure that the equipment was operating correctly and working out all the bugs. There was still active trash disposal. Those numbers were high for those reasons. But this particular year, 2025, the first quarter, especially January, there were a significant number of wind events, Santa Ana conditions back to back over a period of weeks, especially during the catastrophic fire episodes. It's aside from that, the first quarter has historically been the quietest time for complaints at the landfill.
And so we're up on screen now. This is Exhibit 66 that we saw earlier. Is that right?
Yes.
So we're going to show you a demonstrative that adds in Q1 of 2024. You testified you're familiar with the complaint data from 2024.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said, that the order for abatement had only existed for a few months at that time, and there was a lot of work activity going on. So the numbers were extremely high, and we didn't have the rain or as many wind episodes. So there's a lot of factors for 2024.
And you testified earlier that Q1 2023, the reaction was underway, correct?
That's when we were made aware of it, yes.
And you testified that In Q1 2023, there was no geosynthetic cover. The well field hadn't been completely expanded. The west slope excavation was not complete. They testified about a number of factors that were differed between Q1 23 and 25, correct?
Correct.
And you just testified that those same factors that were present in Q1 23 are also present in Q1 24, correct? There was no geosynthetic cover install.
During the first quarter, correct.
And there was trash being accepted at the landfill.
That's correct.
And the west slope excavation hadn't been completed.
That's correct.
Well field expansion hadn't been completed.
That's correct.
In Q1 24, the leachate extraction hadn't expanded.
I'm sorry, what was the
The
question?
leachate extraction, that those capacities had not been expanded yet. Is that right?
To a great extent, yes.
So the decrease in 25 could be due to a number of factors, as you testified, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Israel. I don't have any further questions.
Can I do a brief redirect?
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Israel. Can I ask you to keep this exhibit if I can? While we're looking at this number, we see the complaints in Q1 of 2024. Any NOVs during that same quarter of 2024?
Yes.
How many NOVs?
Well, I'd have to add them up from,
How about
probably-
January? Do you have
yeah.
do you know how many?
In January, there were 11.
How about February? Do we know?
There were 17.
And
These are
then-
just public nuisance.
Okay. For March?
March, there were 16.
So those are just NOVs issued for violation of odor public nuisance?
That's correct.
And can you tell us generally, this board actually heard a status update in January of 2024. We actually came back rather sooner than the parties had initially planned to, because you observed something in late 2023 with respect to the state of the landfill. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What did you observe?
Well, that was at the time we observed a tremendous amount of leachate seeping out of a number of areas in the reaction area. That was the main change.
And in fact, you even observed geysers of leachate shooting out of the surface of the landfill. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
And so is it fair to say that even if they're better in 2025 versus 2024, is that the goal of abating a public nuisance, to be better than the leachate geysers?
Well, in part, I think the goal is to eliminate all the odors so that this community can get relief.
And so what we had talked about, the last full quarter of data that we were looking at prior to when an odor public nuisance was issued. So pre-public nuisance is that Q1 of 2023 data. Is that correct?
Yes,
And there hasn't been a month since May of 2023 where they've had anything sub-public nuisance. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Morgan, did you just want to take another bite?
No,
All
no
right,
further
members of the
questions.
board. Mr. Pearman.
Thank you. Inspector, you're familiar with, have you read OOO, the imminent and substantial endangerment determination and order?
Well, I looked at it, yes.
Okay. Well, there's been some issues about potential conflicts. I want to try and go over a couple of points that they asked for in that versus the proposed order here. So I'm looking at on page 11 of 25 of OOO, and it discusses removal actions at 5.1.2. And the first one is subpart A that I want to discuss, which talks about installing a DTSC approved landfill cover, et cetera, et cetera. And I note condition 78 as proposed to be modified talks about installing a liner of 60 millimeters polyethylene sheeting or other equivalent flexible membrane cover. Are those two things talking about the same thing or two different things to your understanding? 5.1.2A versus what 78 calls for in terms of this line of recovery.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? So condition 78 is referring to the liner beneath leachate tanks rather than the surface, covering the surface of the landfill? Or are you asking, are the materials are the question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let him tell me that.
Okay.
You're listening to two different things. Let him tell me that. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, no, our focus was not on the cover as much as the geomembrane underneath the leachate tanks so that any spills or deposition would not go into the soil.
Okay. And so,
That's what our focus was on.
so in your view, there's no conflict between the two requirements?
Well, I can't say for sure that there's no conflict, but the intent of the condition that we imposed was underneath the storage tanks, not covering over the reaction area.
Okay. And then 512.1.2B of the OOO exhibit refers to among the relocating the leachate storage tanks within Tank Farm 9, relocating leachate tanks. And then our condition 90 or your proposed 90 as modified refers to relocated tank farm. So are we talking about the same thing there or different things?
Is that exhibit 72?
So you can pull up condition 9.
On exhibit 7.
That's 72 on the second page. So condition 90.
If you need a moment to review.
I'm just going to look at
Sure.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my understanding is that there was discussion of relocating the storage tank farms outside of the landfill waste areas where it's currently placed. And we're focused on permitting that process because there's treatment that goes on there. What the order is focusing on is that this document that you provided me with on relocation. This is still kind of an ongoing discussion with the landfill and DTSC.
So in other words, what you see is in 90, HMD's role, we permit whatever relocation is developed under 512B.
Yeah, that would be my understanding of this. Yes.
Okay, okay. And then it looks like condition 99 is new, correct? Proposed 99? It wasn't in it wasn't in November order as far as I can see. Everything after looks like 97 on is all new. Okay.
Yeah, this is all new.
So 99 refers to the new temporary take farm located in Canyon D. And again, 000512 referred to tank farm 9. So again, I'm trying to find out, are we talking about the same thing or a different temporary take farm location in Canyon D in 99 versus what's in 90 or 512B?
Well, they've placed a temporary tank farm location in Canyon D, and they've removed tanks from tank farm 9 to place in that location, if that clarifies.
So that's part of the relocation, in other words?
Yeah.
Okay.
For now, my understanding, it's a temporary location, not a permanent location, or permanent as can be.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions from members of the hearing board? Ms. Verdugo Peralta?
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Israel, thank you so much. I want to say, first of all, for being so diligent, you and your team of going out there and inspecting, and you are the eyes and the ears for our agency as well as the public in this case. When those instances, for instance, of the liners not being under the tanks as well as the other issues that you were there to inspect, did you have a conversation with anybody from Chiquita Canyon to ask them why those things had not been completed?
Yes.
And their answer was,
Well, for example, with the liner, they didn't really give us an answer directly. It was more or less, I specifically remember that from February 27th, the conversation was, well, we're not aware of that requirement, so we'll have to ask our management. This is from the operations staff that we accompanied on that inspection. So that was the answers we got at that time.
did you ever get any follow-up answer to that?
Well, then, as you know, that there's, or maybe not know, that there's discussion of relocating all of the tank farms off of the disposal areas into areas where ideally there's no waste stored underneath, where there could be settlement, which could create a lot of other issues. And so there's that discussion. And that's pretty much been the focus. We did observe that they had relocated it, some of the tanks, 32 of them, as a matter of fact, to this Canyon D for now. And this is still a kind of a work in progress.
Okay, what about the covers that were that had seams, and the covers obviously that were affected, that were torn or not complete, not doing their job? Did you get any answers from them regarding that?
Yeah, they're doing inspections, and obviously there's a lot of settlement that occurs in these areas. And there has been and continuing. And so it seemed to us that it's a constant battle for them, that they're finding these separations in the seams or tears in the seams that they have to repair due to this reason. So they have been proactive. As you could see from those photographs, they're identifying them. And then there are areas that they had not yet identified, which are areas that we focused on when we were doing our surface monitoring, and even as recently as last week.
Mhm. Do you know if there is a better type of membrane that they could be utilizing versus the one that they have now that's obviously, it gets compromised pretty regularly?
Well, I'm just going to answer that saying that I am not an expert in geomembranes and what's better, this fabric versus that. So I would have to defer to someone who is more of an expert. I'm sorry.
Do you, is Chiquita the only landfill that you have inspected, or have you inspected others? Like
Yeah.
Sunshine or any of the others?
Yes, I have.
Okay, do any of the others utilize this type of membrane?
No, the other landfills that I inspect are utilizing other types of covers like closure turf. They're applying posi shell, which you probably have heard from other hearings. But none that I inspect that have a geosynthetic liner covering over the surface.
Okay, and it's probably difficult for you to answer. My next question would be, so are the other landfills more successful with their processes versus Chiquita,
No,
in your opinion?
no. The one in particular, the closest one, even with the posi shell and the closure turf, is having serious issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Israel.
Any additional questions? Mr. Balakapalan.
Yes, Miss, can I ask for the demonstrative slide you had on the complaints?
Yes, just a moment.
Morning, Mr. Israel. Looking at this, I know the district slide compared 23 to 25 and showed the increase now, but looking at now 24, is it fair to say there's a reduction in the number of complaints from 24?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other thing which, and we've heard testimony before too, when you have favorable winds and it blows from the north, it's not towards the community, it's away from the community, right? So what is occurring that they're still, if the winds are favorable and blowing away, why are they still getting so much?
I wish I could answer that question. Simply, I don't know. I was surprised too that, because I asked the inspectors in the community, I said, well, what direction is the wind blowing? He says, well, it's coming from the north, but we're still detecting odors. And, especially in the city of Val Verde, probably a lot of air gets trapped and circulates around. I know that they've done some smoke studies, and the air does behave rather unusual in that location. But there's areas where even if winds are blowing from the north, I'm not talking about too much greater than 5 miles per hour. We're still getting odor complaints, and this is 24 hours a day. But when our inspectors are out there, there's been instances where we've had these favorable conditions where we have confirmed nuisance odors this year, this quarter.
But historically in the past, that wasn't the case, right? I remember the slides. Okay.
For sure. But historically, we didn't have this reaction either.
Exactly. So the reaction area is closer towards the Via Verde community, correct? Is in the northwest side?
Correct.
Okay.
Northwest side.
Now, the slide where we showed that the inspectors were there and taking readings around the wells, and comparatively to this is in the reaction area, right? And that's why they were getting high readings in that around the well.
That's correct.
And that's not typical for other areas that is non-reaction area around the well to get such high readings, or what's your experience?
Okay, well, we've done a number of these type of surveys before, even right up to at the time that the reaction had started, before we had observed any of the settlement occurring on the West Toe Drain slope areas. And basically at the base of wells, we've had issues. And we verify that at other landfills too. It sort of acts as a conduit, and maybe it's flaws in the gas collection system. Maybe they're not collecting enough. There could be a lot of reasons, but we've always found that even electrical poles, telephone poles act as conduits for landfill gas to come out in the surface.
So this high levels, so it's not unusual to the readings that you found.
I mean, I've seen it before. I don't want to say it's something we see everywhere. We've seen it before.
Now,
I've seen it.
Ms. Roberts said there was a condition, and I'm trying to find that required the geomembrane cover around. There are geomembrane covers around the wells, correct? In the reaction area. The reaction area. Now, so is that a condition, or is a new? I thought I heard it mention that there's a new condition to add, but it's already an existing condition, correct? To have the geomembrane around the wells.
So if I can clarify, and then he can discuss it, what I was referring to in my question is new condition number 101. So that's the last page of Exhibit 72.
Right. So that encompasses. So if you look at that, okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Israel. So if you look at 101, I'll give you a minute to look at it.
72.
Yes.
Okay, so this will then encompass all the, because I didn't see specifically mention of wellhead areas, so, so this any point seams or seals around the reaction, so that'll encompass all, even including the wells then, basically, is that your understanding?
Yeah, it's been a problem for them, and so we decided we'd put that as a condition. So we want these inspected as well, because previous surveys have shown that they are sources of surface emission, which is likely odors in the
So
community.
which one specifically then it points to where the well, because the connection points, seams and seals, those are the ones we saw, all stretched out, right?
Right.
So which one is specifically focused on the, or is it just the understanding that it includes the well area also?
Correct.
Okay.
That part.
All right. And then they have to at least once every 7 days and promptly repair any cover. And is that within how many hours when they see, well, we saw the pictures where there were cracks, which you took a photograph of. Do you know how properly they repaired that? Or is there a requirement for them to do it within X amount of hours?
Well, now there's more of a requirement, but specifically, if they're identifying it, the idea is, okay, we've identified this seal, or I'm sorry, we've identified tears, we need to get those repaired as soon as possible. And especially if it's almost a weekly nuisance violation, everything is contributing to that. So the quicker they can address it, and hopefully this condition will move that along further, it is hoped.
I'm just trying to see if there's a quantification of the promptly. Is it within several hours, within a day? What is your understanding that what promptly repair means? Because if they could say, we identified today and we repaired it 3 days later, is that considered prompt, or what in your mind is a prompt address for the repair?
My understanding is, and I think you'd have to talk to their staff, is that when they identify these, they're going to address it immediately, not a week later.
Or
Yeah,
days later?
especially if they've identified.
If I can clarify, this is not one of the modified conditions, but this is the current order and it's condition number 30. And by terms, it says not later than 2 hours after identification during inspection for repair, safety permitting.
And you're saying 30, okay.
Yeah, I have it pulled up on screen.
All right, I got it, yeah.
So it'd be 2 hours.
Okay, maybe I have the older one. Okay, I don't see the 2 hours. Okay, landfill cover, it says promptly repair any. Is that okay, you're showing 30 with the 2 hours there? Okay. Yeah, okay. I
Line
got it. I see.
23,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
Right.
So that will, okay, thank you. Now, just on the tox unit that they brought back, is this the same unit they had there previously? They removed it because they felt they didn't need it with the flare 3 running, and then they brought back, or do you know what the new tox unit, is it new? Was an existing one that removed and they brought it back to your, do you know?
No, this is a different unit, a different equipment than what was previously removed.
Okay, and do you know, they don't have a various location permit, as such, where are they renting it, or is that something that they?
Oh, I think you'd have to ask them. I can't answer that.
Okay, all right. I think those were all the just one, just a minor thing. If you could look at 27E in the proposed stipulated language, I think it's just a typo. I see after the inspector's name, air quality inspector, and there's an 8 there, so I'm assuming it's just a typo, correct? 27E.
I think
Yes,
it's a type.
Yes, we would agree that's a typo.
All right. And then, let's see. Just once, let me see if I've got everything here. So the new, do you know, or are you involved in the discussion where the temporary farm, I mean, they're going temporarily to D, and then, so there's a lot of, in relocating the tanks to another location, and then temporary, and then maybe a more permanent, are those activities will result in odors and because you got, large scale movement of pipes and tanks and so forth.
Let's see how I can answer that. Okay, I'm not involved directly in why they're relocating. It's just my understanding of the reason. My understanding also is that this Canyon D is sort of a staging area, temporary.
Have you observed them moving some of them from I think it's 7 to 9, some of the, you say 32 tanks. Have you seen those process of relocation?
I've only seen the end of the process. So when we inspected tank 9, because each of these tanks are tank farm 9, each of these tanks are numbered. This is where tank 58 used to be. You can see it's missing. It's no longer in tank farm 9. This last inspection we did, we didn't go to tank 7, so I couldn't tell you how many from that tank farm, but there were a number of them from tank 9 that were relocated to Canyon D as a temporary staging area.
So now, because of the new proposed condition, they have to put cover the geomembrane before they put the tank on top for anything they're relocating, right?
Well, I will tell you that they have done that. And so there is liner underneath the staging tanks and tank
So
in
they're
that
doing
Canyon
that.
D.
Yeah. But the condition here, which requires them to, so the 1 in 7 that don't have the liner, they have until September to do that
Correct,
if they don't restage it.
correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. And so we'll come back at 11:25. to call. Okay, it's 11:26. We're back on the record at 11:27 a.m. Just out of curiosity, how many more witnesses do you have, Ms. Roberts?
No further witnesses for the
Ms.
district.
Morgan, you have a few, right?
We have two.
Okay, very well. Mr. Balakapalan?
I had a follow-up question for Mr.
Sir, the floor is yours.
Mr. Israel, refer you to condition 27E. Again, no, it was not the typo I was focused on, but there was the last sentence on this page 2 on condition 27. It talks about spills or leaks greater than 100 gallons where root cause was not determined. I saw Chiquita's report. They were going to track leachate seep greater than 80 gallons and odor of 4, odor level of 4 or greater. Do you know why it's not 80 and having an odor component to it? Because I noticed in the report that they also indicate odors when they look at the gallonage spills, why the 80 is changed to 100.
I can't answer that.
Okay, I'll ask
that number. Yeah.
Yeah, I think their report, we would have to defer to Chiquita's witness.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly, all right? Just want to be very clear, there are no other questions from members of the hearing board. Ms. Morgan, your witness.
Thank you. We are still working on the technical piece so we can get our slides available for the public.
Okay, so while you're doing that, so is everyone comfortable with taking lunch at noon or 12:15, or do you think we'll have this buttoned up by 12:15?
We can certainly have our first witness. It depends on how many questions we have, I suppose, for both, but we have about 5 to 10 minutes of testimony from each of our two witnesses.
Okay, so then why don't we just press forward? Are you okay with 12:15? Okay, I just want to make sure because I know I want to respect the collective bargaining agreement. All right. Okay, Ms. Morgan. And then I have some exhibits to call out after, but go right ahead.
Okay. Our first witness is Ms. Srividya Viswanathan. My colleague, Ms. Barton, will be taking her testimony.
Thank you. And if I could just be re-added. We should be good.
Just turn this on.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Viswanathan. Please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Srividya Viswanathan, Srividhya. Last name Viswanathan.
Did you take the oath this morning?
Yes, I did.
And have you testified before this board during prior hearings on this stipulated order?
Yes,
You serve on the reaction committee as the landfill gas collection or well field and dewatering systems expert. Is that right?
that is correct.
And you executed a declaration in this case on April 9th covering status updates on Chiquita's landfill gas collection system, dewatering efforts, and leachate systems. Is that correct?
Yes,
And for the record, Ms. Viswanathan's declaration was entered as Exhibit G. Today, I'm going to ask you about Chiquita's progress installing vertical wells in the reaction area and dewatering pumps and associated infrastructure in those wells. So let's start with the expansion of the gas collection system. Has Chiquita been expanding its well field since September 2023 when the stipulated order came into effect?
yes,
So if you look up on the slide here, pausing while it loads.
Oh.
Okay. Does this map show the as-built well field as of September 2023?
yes,
And so if we move to this second slide, Does this map show the as-built well field as of April of this year?
Yes.
Why was this well field expansion an important part of Chiquita's mitigation strategy?
As we know, Chiquita has been experiencing a reaction, and in order to mitigate that reaction, Chiquita installed and expanded the well field and added dewatering pumps. The goal was to remove heat, to remove landfill gas and liquids. Both of these are critical to managing the reaction.
But do both of these actions also help to prevent seeps and fugitive surface emissions from the landfill?
Yes.
As mentioned in the conditions chart attached as attachment A to your declaration, condition 15B requires Chiquita to install vertical landfill gas wells within the condition 9A reaction area to certain depths and densities by January 6, 2025. Is that right?
Yes.
Was Chiquita able to drill wells to the desired or the achievable depths by the January 6 deadline?
Chiquita drilled wells to achievable depths.
What challenges did Chiquita face when trying to drill to desired depths?
In the reaction area, particularly, the waste mass is extremely wet. So when you're drilling through a wet waste mass with low bearing capacity or low structure, it's often the borehole does not hold structure. So they have experienced cave-ins. There are safety risks associated with it. And so you drill as deep as the field conditions allow.
Are these challenges at all surprising or unexpected in Chiquita's case?
No, it's not uncommon for wet landfills.
Since Chiquita hasn't been able to achieve the desired depths, it will either need to re-drill some wells or drill new wells to the desired depths. Is that correct?
Yes.
How will Chiquita decide which wells to re-drill or to drill new wells near and when?
I mean, well field drilling it's an ongoing process. We're constantly evaluating the well field, looking at the well performance, landfill gas recovery, liquid levels, and based on this, either wells will be re-drilled or additional wells will be added to the site.
To your knowledge, when will Chiquita begin drilling this next round of wells?
I believe the next round of drilling is late, end of second quarter, early third quarter.
So let's turn to pumps and dewatering. Can you remind us, why do we want to extract liquids from the landfill?
Well, you want to extract liquids from the landfill for two reasons. As I said before, firstly, removing liquids allows removal of heat, which supports mitigating the reaction. Additionally, as liquids are removed, more perforations in the well casings get opened up, which allow for increased gas recovery.
As of April 11, 2025, how many pumps are installed in vertical wells?
Approximately 150 pumps.
All right, I might have been kicked off again. My apologies. We have a slide of the pumps installed in the vertical well fields that we can at least hand out the hard copies to for those here in the room.
Okay.
And I am trying again, yes.
Chair Ellie, will I be getting one via email or how will I be getting one?
Yes, Madam Verdugo Peralta, they're going to send the information to the clerk's office. Okay, it's
Thank
already
you.
been sent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're back online now, so it should be sharing.
So Ms. Viswanath, then, looking at this slide here, is this a map of the dewatering pumps installed at the landfill as of April 11th of this year?
Yes.
What's the process for installing these pumps?
Pump installation is an involved process. It has components beyond the pump itself. I mean, first, the infrastructure, which is force main lines that carry the liquids that are pulled out of the pump. those have to be installed depending on whether it's a pneumatic, air-driven, or electric pump. Compressed air lines, or for electrical lines, control panels have to be installed. And then once this infrastructure is there, then using heavy equipment, you lower the pump inside the casing because I mean, you have to use equipment because the pumps are heavy and it's also a safety concern.
How many pumps are on site and waiting to be installed?
The site has approximately 100 pumps pending installation.
And these pumps are all designed to be installed in a specific well or set of wells, is that correct?
Yes, set of wells.
How does Chiquita determine where and when to install the new pumps?
Well, Chiquita is constantly evaluating the wells from a liquids perspective, liquid levels, temperatures, looking at on-site accumulation capacity, off-site disposal capacity, and then based on the performance of the well, they determine where pumps need to go.
To your knowledge, how much liquid has been extracted from the landfill between January and March of this year?
Approximately 20 million gallons.
Is that an increase from the same period last year in 2024?
Yes.
Do you know approximately how much we extracted in that same period in 2024?
About 12.5 million gallons.
How much of the extracted liquid gets disposed of off-site each week?
It's my understanding that Chiquita is able to maintain the balance. So within a 2% range, they're able to dispose almost all the liquid that they're recovering.
In your expert opinion, has Chiquita seen progress from its dewatering efforts?
Certainly. Chiquita is seeing improvement in the liquids recovered, and they're continuing the dewatering infrastructure improvements.
So in conclusion, is Chiquita's expansion of its well field and dewatering infrastructure having the intended effects?
Yes. Yeah, the site is seeing an increase in recovery of liquids, and that is supporting the site improvements.
You were just on site at the landfill yesterday, is that correct?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on how the site looks as compared to a year ago?
I'm encouraged by what I saw yesterday. Compared to 1 year ago around this time, landfill, the well field, both the wells as well as dewatering infrastructure systems have been expanded. We're seeing an increase in recovery. I generally did not smell a lot of odors with the exception of I went to the north area and there was a discrete area where I did smell odors. But to me, that's a marked improvement over where the site has been over a year ago. And with the additional infrastructure improvements that are planned at the site, I believe that the site is well positioned to continue the progress it's been making.
Thank you, Ms. Viswanathan. No further questions.
Right, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, Ms. Viswanathan. I have a couple of questions for you. Were you in the room and did you hear any of Inspector Israel's testimony this morning?
Yes.
Great. Inspector Israel kind of walked us through that because Chiquita Canyon had been reporting by January of 2023 very high levels of dimethyl sulfide in their landfill gas. He was able to conclude based on reports from Chiquita that this is a symptom of the reaction. So he concluded that the reaction was ongoing by January of 2023. Do you agree with that conclusion?
I would certainly say that the DMS concentrations were increasing.
You don't agree that there was a subsurface reaction that typically that Chiquita calls an elevated temperature landfill event occurring to cause the elevated DMS?
No, I didn't say that. I was just saying that the DMS concentrations were certainly increasing, and yes, there was signs of reaction.
Okay, so by that Q1 of 2023, we were seeing the reaction? You agree with that?
Early reaction, yes.
Okay. So excuse me, because I'm not an engineer, but is it correct that my understanding of what you were testifying to just now is that essentially when you have a dual extraction, so you're removing both gas and liquid in a single well, the liquid essentially allows for more perforations in the gas well, and that allows for more gas recovery because you've removed the liquid. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, if when you have a well where the perforations are inundated with liquids, they're blocked, then it's going to reduce the amount of gas you're able to recover. So when you put a pump and you're able to maintain open perforations, it allows for improved recovery.
And when we're talking about gas recovery, we're meaning that essentially is meaning gas that is staying within the collection system and ultimately routed to some sort of combustion device, like a flare or a thermal oxidizer. Is that fair?
Yes, whatever gas is in the waste mass.
So anything that's not recovered is either staying in the landfill or potentially could be coming out of the landfill, not in the collection system. So like a surface emission.
It could be.
Okay. And then I think you also testified that the liquid pumps, they themselves remove heat that is kind of with the liquid, and that itself is a mitigation for the underlying cause, the reaction itself.
The pumps remove liquid, and with the liquid, the liquid is warm. So that's how heat is removed. But the pumps themselves are not heat sinks. They're not reducing heat by themselves.
Is it fair then that you would agree, and a significant portion of this abatement order has kind of been premised on the idea that liquid pumps and removing the liquid is either directly controlling, helping to mitigate the reaction, and at least indirectly helping to mitigate odors?
Yes.
Okay. Did you happen to see the chart that Ms. Barton had pulled up and was discussing with Mr. Israel regarding complaints, particularly in the first few months of 2024?
Yes.
And Inspector Israel noted that 2024, those first few months were very high for complaints. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was anything happening with respect to pumps and removal of liquid during that same time frame, the first few months of 2024, to your understanding?
I don't remember the timeline of when the pumps were installed, but I do remember that well field infrastructure, like wells were being drilled. Or there were
Do you
plants.
recall that Chiquita Canyon specifically removed pumps to stop extracting liquid in beginning of
Yes.
2024?
Thanks for that. Yes, so I remember that in 2024, February, when we testified, there were 44 pumps first installed. And then because of the issue with the hazardous characterization, pumps were removed. And at one point, there were 2 pumps in the well field. Yes.
Okay, so is it fair to say that the timeline is the reaction was ongoing in 2023, you had installed some of the pumps, but then by early 2024, because the leachate was characteristically hazardous, Chiquita Canyon actually stopped installing pumps and removed some of the already installed pumps?
Yes.
Yes. So, and you agreed that that was a mitigation. So you actually had some mitigation that was for odors that you essentially had to pull back on in the Q1 of 2024 because the leachate was characteristically hazardous?
Yes, I think during the period they were managing the liquids removed and the disposal issues that they were facing as a result of this unforeseen development. They did temporarily remove pumps before they could get organized and start reinstallation.
So is it fair to say then that when you're comparing how are we relative to a year ago, you testified, you saw the landfill yesterday versus 1 year ago, you're comparing it to when you had removed the odor mitigation you had already installed at that time 1 year ago?
Yes.
So was 1 year ago, is it fair to say at that point in the reaction, that was kind of the worst case scenario?
Yeah, which is why I think that the site is in a much better place, because there was a point where at the peak of the complaints, we had 2 pumps installed. Today we have 150 pumps installed. We're extracting 60% more liquid. So I am encouraged by what I see.
Okay, I have one more kind of clarification for you. I'm going to pull up, this is exhibit number 72. This is the proposed stipulated modifications. Inspector Israel, in a colloquy with Mr. Balagopalan, said that he understood that seals of the geosynthetic cover would include wells because the wells in the reaction area are sealed to the cover. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, so the way the covers are designed, and this is common even if you don't have a cover, in our typical construction, we use a geomembrane or, HDPE boot to prevent emissions coming out of the borehole. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all of my questions, Ms. Viswanathan.
All right, members of the board. Mr. Balakapalan.
Yes, still good morning, Ms. Vishwanathan. I had a few questions. I think are you familiar with the report that Cicada did where they talked about if it's 80 gallons and over the threshold of 4, then they'll take some action to remediate it?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
You know, okay.
No.
Then let me, what fraction, I mean, when you have, do you have failures of the pumps? What fraction of the pumps that have installed that fail and you have to remove and replace? And the same thing for the wells,
On the pumps, I don't have numbers. I do know that the Chiquita had started with pneumatic pumps, and as they started noticing the performance and the maintenance issues with the pumps, they switched to electric pumps, which seem to have require less maintenance and they have more. They're efficient, so they already had, I think, 77 of those, and the new 100 pumps are all electric.
And how does Chiquita know when a pump is not working?
Based on my conversation with the field operators, they say when they have to go back to a pump within 4 to 7 days, then they tend to say, then they start questioning, is this the right pump? Usually with the pneumatic pump, they will replace with another pneumatic pump. So if this is my, this is what I understand is happening. So if they replace the pump and they have to come back again within another 4 to 7 days, then they're saying, okay, this is probably not the right pump. And so now they've switched to the electric pumps.
Okay. So they do have a process in place to do.
They've got a process in place, yes.
Take you to condition 72, the proposed stipulated condition. I had a question.
May I refer to?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Are you familiar with that?
I am peripherally familiar with it.
No, because I did, going through the document, I'm not sure whether we've removed it, but I did see an email from you regarding that. But it was dated December 14, I think, 2024, where the recommendation was to do it on a monthly basis.
Yes.
So is that what this is addressing then? Further, may submit further recommendation. So has a recommendation been submitted, or is this something, this was in, December 2024?
Yeah, I understand that condition 72 has been accepted.
But has been accepted, yes, because it's stipulated. But but they didn't talk about the frequency when you do the vapor test and so forth. I think your email indicate due to low concentration, low flow, it more appropriate to do it on a monthly frequency. Is that
Yes.
Is that what your
Yes.
opinion is?
Yes.
Is that something that you're going to be communicating to the district regarding this on the frequency of the?
I will follow back up with the reaction committee and then.
Have them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's it. I have no further question. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Mr. Pearman.
Has the decision by Chiquita to cease active landfill operations changed, if any, of the work of the reaction committee?
I would say to some degree, yes, because while it's not me, I would say probably Mr. Neil Bolton, my colleague, he was looking into some of the active operations, but not for all the members.
All right, Ms. Morgan.
We have no further questions for Ms. Vinathan, so
Next
we'll move
witness.
on to our next witness.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So our next witness is Mr. Neil Bolton. Good morning, Mr. Bolton. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Good morning. Yes, Neil Bolton, Neal Bolton.
Did you take the oath this morning?
Yes, I did.
You've testified before this hearing board before, but could you briefly remind them of your area of expertise?
Yes, I am a civil engineer and president of Blue Ridge Services, and I have 47 years' experience in landfill and solid waste operations, primarily related to operations and safety.
You executed a declaration in this case on April 9th, is that right?
That is correct.
For the hearing board, that declaration has been entered as Exhibit Triple H. It covers many aspects of Chiquita's landfill operations. Today, Mr. Bolton, I'm going to ask you about just a few topics: general operations at the site, leachate management, geosynthetic cover, and the Western Slope excavation project.
Okay.
But to begin, when was the last time you visited the landfill?
I was there yesterday.
And let's start with the critical operation update. As of January 1st, 2025, the landfill is closed to the acceptance of outside waste. Is that right?
That is right.
The landfill is accepting a very small amount of non-hazardous waste that is internally generated, correct?
That's also correct.
And the South Coast AQMD received notice of the landfill's operational change, correct?
Yes, I believe all regulatory agencies related to Chiquita's operation received that notice, including AQMD.
And as far as you know, this operational change is permanent, correct?
Oh, yes, as far as I know.
Chiquita is currently working with its regulators to prepare for closure. Is that right?
Yes, that means development of a closure plan and modification of their previous closure plan because things have changed. But yes, they are working through the process of closure.
So let's move on now to updates on Chiquita's leachate management. Is Chiquita still monitoring and recording leaks and spills at the landfill and reporting any to the South Coast AQMD?
Yes.
Now, as a reminder for the hearing board or members of the public, Chiquita and the district define spills as those that would be caused by people, whereas leaks are caused by an equipment failure or malfunction. Is that generally correct?
That is correct, yes.
If a spill or leak is identified, Chiquita takes prompt steps to clean it up, correct?
Yeah, they respond immediately. Most spills or leaks are mitigated that day. In some cases, maybe over the next day, so 48 hours.
Could we be admitted as a panelist to share some slides, please? Thank you. Yeah. Are you aware of any new practices that Chiquita has implemented to help avoid spills and leaks?
Yes, there are a number of new practices that they have implemented.
Chiquita's been providing additional training to its staff and reviewing protocols with third parties, particularly with these new practices, correct?
That's right.
Do you think the new BMPs and additional training have contributed to a decrease of both spills and leaks?
Well, they absolutely have, and that's an ongoing process because of the complexity of the system. But yeah, definitely the BMPs, the training, the procedures that they're using are being affected in terms of mitigating or minimizing spills and leaks.
So we just handed out some slides. We will email this to the clerk's office as well, but it does not look like we're able to share right now on the webcast.
Perfect.
Looking at this first slide, Mr. Bolton, which says leak events totals per month. Can you please describe what we're looking at here?
Yes. So Chiquita monitors, inspects twice a day for leaks and seeps. And when there is a leak or a seep, they note that. And so this is actually showing the number of leaks that we've had per month since we started recording those or inspecting for those specifically. Previously, they were just integrated into some of the SEEP inspections. But in September, we start based on a October condition or August condition. We started specifically inspecting for leaks and seeps. And so this shows the number of leaks that were detected month over month from September through March. And as you can see, the number of leaks is declining continuously. And there are some, some months we may have one type of leak or another, but generally the trend is down.
If we turn to the next slide, please, this is spill events totals per month. Can you please describe what we're looking at here?
Yes. So when we have a spill, again, in layman's term, a spill is human error. Someone makes a mistake, and we have a spill. And you can see that generally the average trend is downward, although October we had a number of spill events. And we'll also, it's noteworthy that a number of the BMPs and the training that were integrated into Chiquita's procedures were developed based on the October activities or the events that we had there.
So looking at these trends over the past, 6 months or so, we're seeing these downward trends overall, but we haven't seen zero. Is the goal 0 leaks or spills?
Well, the goal is 0, but the reality is we'll likely never achieve a consistent 0 leak, 0 spill condition.
And why is that?
Well, it's the complexity of the system. All of you are familiar with plumbing in some degree in your house or in different places. At Chiquita, we have more than 50 miles of piping with thousands of flanges and fittings and hoses and valves, and it's a very complex system. So to think that we'll go from what we have now to consistently 0 leaks or 0 spills is just not realistic. That's not going to happen. The best we can do is to have what we have now, which is a very rapid response and get on those problems as soon as possible.
And you took a photo when you were at the landfill yesterday, correct? Which is in this slide deck.
Yes.
Can you describe what that photo is showing?
Sure. This photo is, I'll wait till we get it pulled up here. Okay. There we go. Now it's on the screen. So this photo was taken at Tank Farm 7. And at the tank farms, we have these large storage tanks lined up to hold leachate. And we have more than 200 of those tanks on site. And this is just a picture of what's happening between 2 rows of tanks. And we have, again, over 200 tanks. So this is showing us probably 30 or so tanks. You can see the amount of plumbing that's going on between these 2 tanks or these 2 rows of tanks. So this combined with what I said earlier, more than 50 miles of piping at the site, is a very complex plumbing condition. And so there are a lot of BMPs in terms of how we move leachate with the truck, how we move leachate with a pump, how we inspect tanks that come onto the site before they're filled to make sure that we have good tank integrity. We have a tagging system because a number of the spills that we had in October, and again, there were 11 spill events in October 2024. A number of those were related to just a driver not checking all the valves on his tanker truck as he loaded up and pulled off site, and we had a minor spill. And so Chiquita started a tagging system, which if you can just imagine a little blue plastic tag, and the drivers have now been trained to go around their tanker truck, inspect and close every valve. And once that's closed, that gets a blue tag on it. When the truck shows up at the gatehouse, the Chiquita gatekeeper inspects those tags, and that goes so far as actually a notification on the manifest with the transport manifest that says, yes, this has been tagged, the tags have been inspected, and this truck is now good to leave the site and get on the road. So we have responded very consistently. When we have a problem, we're trying to see what is the root cause of that and respond to that and implement training. But again, let's be realistic. In a system this complex, though our goal is 0 leaks and 0 spills, we're unlikely to see that month to month. We're going to have issues, and a quick response is our best solution to that.
So, Mr. Bolton, are you familiar with the SOPs that Chiquita submitted to the district on October 18th related to leachate tank operations?
Yes, I am.
Those were designed to prevent leachate tank overflow, failure, spillage within these tank farms we're looking at. Is that right?
That is correct.
And Chiquita is required to implement those upon approval by South Coast. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you know if they've been approved?
To my knowledge, they have not been approved.
But is Chiquita implementing the mitigation measures anyway?
Yes, they, on their own call, they have begun, or they had begun implementing those measures because they just made sense. They would help prevent spills and leaks. And so Chiquita, even without formal approval by AQMD, they have implemented those BMPs.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bolton, let's move on to discuss the West Slope tow drain installation, which we also refer to as the West Slope excavation project.
Okay.
You've previously testified to this hearing board about that project, correct?
Yes,
And Chiquita completed this project in December 2024. Is that right?
that is correct.
You've also testified previously about Chiquita's installation of geosynthetic cover. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you confirm that that cover has now been fully installed?
Yes, it has been fully installed. I think that the last part was installed and completed in early January.
In total, about how many acres of cover were installed?
About 46 acres. That's equivalent to, just to give a perspective, of approximately 45 football fields worth of geosynthetic cover on top of the reaction area.
And about 44 acres were required by regulatory orders with an additional 1.3 acres or so installed by Chiquita. Is that right?
Yeah, ballpark, and it brings us to a total of about 46 acres.
And we've got two slides here that show the progression of the cover. Could you please walk us through this timeline briefly?
Yes. So this begins in February 2024. At that point, we were fully aware there was a reaction. We knew we were having issues. We were seeing a lot of leachate seeps along the western toe area, kind of the left side of the photographs there. And so during that time, we started installing geosynthetic cover on that northwest corner of the landfill. And that progressed down, and it could only progress so quickly because we had work to do on the west toe project, which is the left side of the photos there. So you can see February 2024, 2.3 acres, and then 2 months later, 9.8, and a couple months later, 33.5. And by August, we had about 42 acres of geosynthetic cover in place.
And as we move to the next slide, you'll see the final images of the current extent of the cover. Is that
Yes,
right?
That's correct. So by October 2024, so just 6 months ago or so, we were at 42 acres. We got to 44.6. And then if you look at the February 2025 photograph, sort of down toward the bottom of that, well, in the middle of the photograph, but at the bottom of the white liner that we've been building in the northwest corner, there's a little black rectangle. That's the last 1.3 acres that we put in. That was the last part of that. That brings us to a total today of about 46 acres.
Once the cover was installed, the site completed a tie-in along the western and northern slope, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Could you please explain for the hearing board and the public what a tie-in is?
Sure. The landfill is underlain by a liner, and part of that liner is a thick, high-density polyethylene HDPE plastic layer, and that is under the entire part of the landfill here. The geosynthetic cap is also made of the same material, high-density polyethylene, and the liner comes up to the ground surface along the edge of the landfill. The plastic liner rolls over the top, and where those two meet, those are actually heat welded. We melt the plastic together and weld those together. So we're not just tucking it in, it's actually welded to the liner along the west side and along the north side. And you'll recall in a number of the hearings that we've had in the past, we talked about leachate seeps. We may talk about that more today, depending on what questions come up. But most of those seeps were concentrated on the west toe and on the northern toe. And so the work that's been done to clean that up and getting this cap in place has been primarily to help mitigate those seeps and the associated odors from those seeps.
So we've got one more slide to look at, which shows a chart like the others, but with the total number of seeps by month.
Yes. So this very clearly shows the effectiveness of the West Toe project and the North Slope Termination project, again, where we went in and actually that project was more than just putting the geosynthetic on top. Before we put the geosynthetic, we went along and excavated along the inside edge of the landfill on the West Toe and to some extent along the North Toe. And we pulled material out and replaced that with gravel and drainage material, perforated pipes, some sumps where we could access and pump leachate out or be able to set pumps in there to pump it out into our leachate collection system. And so we can see that January 2024, we were reporting a lot of seeps. That was bad time for us in terms of seeps. But over time, those have decreased. But most important, we'll see oftentimes seeps may be a little more prevalent during the wet season than during the dry season for obvious reasons. But it's most important to compare what we see January, February, March 2024 in terms of the number of seeps, 17, 18, and 18, to what we're seeing first quarter, January, February, March, 1, 3, and 0. And we've had no leachate seeps to date that I'm aware of since February 2025. So that problem has been mitigated, and like everything else that we do, it's a large scale, lots of area, lots of work, but over time we have gone from what you see first quarter 2024 down to now virtually no seeps month to month.
So you testified earlier that you visited the site yesterday, correct?
Yes, I did.
And before that, you had last visited the site in November, is that right?
That is correct.
How have things changed since November?
Well, the odor at the site is considerably noticeably less. The north slope in November, that was unsecured. The top geosynthetic cap had not been welded or attached to the bottom liner. And so that was a significant source of odor. The site is very well buttoned up. We've got, again, 46 acres of geosynthetic cap on there. The North Toe project has been completed. We drove that yesterday along the toe of that slope. That looks very good. The west slope, same way. The entire geosynthetic cap has been tied in. The site looks great. The site looks markedly better than it did 6 or 7 months ago.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. I don't have any further questions today.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts.
In the interest of time, the district will waive cross for this witness.
Thank you very kindly, members of the hearing board. Mr. Pearman.
So you've seen, I presume, the stipulated conditions, Exhibit 72, sir?
Yes, I have.
Under 90, there's talk of within 30 days of DTS final approval of the written work plan for the relocated tank farm. Has that work plan been submitted to them yet?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Looking at 99, talks about Chiquita by April 30s, submitting a permit modification to increase the landfill's liquid storage capacity and include the new temporary tank farm located in Canyon D. So my question is the relocated, or is the temporary tank farm located in Canyon D related to the relocated tank farm discussed in item 90?
Yes, in terms of tank farm 9, some of those tanks being relocated. In fact, when I was there yesterday, the lined area in Canyon D had been completed. There were some tanks in place there. And I believe that the plan is that additional tanks will be coming from tank farm 9 into the Canyon D location.
So my question then is, if you're supposed to submit by April 30th a permit modification to deal with that, but you don't know if you've even submitted and gotten approval of the DTS work plan, is there some sort of conflict there?
I'm not aware of any, but again, I'm not part of the team that would be submitting that work plan. I may review it at some point, so I can't tell you what the status is of the submittal of that work plan. I don't know.
Thank you.
Could I ask a couple of questions on redirect just to help clarify Mr. Pearman's
Not a
point?
problem, not a problem at all. Then we'll go to Mr. Balakapalan. Go right ahead.
Mr. Bolton, when you were on site, you testified you saw Canyon D, which is lined and has some tanks at this point, correct?
That is correct.
Did you also see prep work being done at cell 8B?
Yes.
And can you describe what that is?
Well, cell 8B was to be the next area that the landfill would have filled had they not ceased operation. And cell 8B is on the south end of the landfill, and it's a big canyon. It's where the main access road goes up into the landfill, one of the main access roads. And so that area has been, some preliminary grading has been done there. There has been some staking put in place. And my understanding is there's about 400,000 cubic yards of soil that would be built into there to create a tiered, a three-step tiered area that will be a more extensive interim tank farm. And that is in process right now.
And is it your understanding that the rest of Tank Farm 9 would be relocated to that area for?
That's my understanding,
now.
that all of Tank Farm 9 will be relocated. Some of it has been relocated into Canyon D. The bulk of it will be going into the 8B area.
And I can represent for Mr. Pearman in Exhibit 000, the deadline for that work plan you referred to is May 2nd. So that is the work plan that would be submitted in May to describe the work that Mr. Bolton just testified about.
Are you okay, Mr. Perman? All right, good deal. Mr. Balakapalan?
Yes, yeah, Dr. Mr. Bolton. I had a few questions. In your declaration, you indicated that the waste from the spent carbon is going to 8A.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
So are those odorous? I mean, I know the report said you're removing and testing it and make sure it's non-hazardous before it goes there. Are they a source of odor also?
Yes, and we saw some tanks. So what happens, there are 24 tanks. They're almost as tall as this room and probably 8 feet in diameter. And there are 24 of those, 2 up top on the landfill and 2 down below. And that's kind of how we're pre-treating some of the leachate. So that carbon material, once a day or 1 tank per day, they will remove that carbon material and replace it. So out of 24 tanks, 2 a day are being done. So every 12 days, they're going through that cycle. I saw that material. It had been placed in some roll-off containers and it was tarped and it was being staged as it was being tested. It needs to be dewatered. And then if it tests characteristically non-hazardous, it's going into 8A. There's an area there that they can fill. So that is how that's being processed. But yes, there can be odor from that, and that material is pulled out, it's put in containers, and it's covered with a tarp.
So what steps is Chiquita undertaking to reduce the odors when you go move it to cell 8A?
Well, they're not landfilling that every day. So they put that in a tank. It has to be dewatered. It goes into a roll-off container, roll-off box. It's tarped. And as it goes through that process, it's been tested, it's being dewatered. And then about every 3rd day, my understanding is every 3rd day, they'll take that material up to 8A, open up a small area. In fact, they use a D6 dozer to strip soil back about 20 feet wide, dump that material in and immediately cover it. So in terms
that's what
of,
I wanted to get at. They will cover it up.
They're immediately covering that.
Okay. Let me move on here. On the Westo project, I didn't see before any reference, and maybe I missed it on the north side termination project, reference. Was it something new that was undertaken? Or was that already referenced previously?
It was part of the North Toe drain project. But what we found was we still have leachate seeps on that north slope. And that area, we needed to be able to tie the geomembrane into that. And in order to do that properly, there was some amount of excavation along the north toe, the north termination project, I think is what we're calling. And French drain put in there, which is gravel, perforated pipe and all of that. And then the top geosynthetic could be heat welded to the bottom liner. But my understanding is that was all covered under the initial West Toe drain project. It was just an extension of that.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't I don't recall that North Termination Project being
Yeah,
mentioned.
it didn't get a lot of press at the time because compared to the West Tow project, which took several months, I think they were just about a week or 10 days on the North Termination Project.
Okay. Actually, do you mind showing, Ms. Butt, can you bring that up where that North Termination Project area is?
Okay. So if you look at the northwest corner of each picture, the top left corner, you'll see the white geosynthetic cap that's in there. There's a long stretch that runs up and down along the west edge, and then there's some that runs along the north edge. And that north toe termination was that entire northern upper part of that.
Oh, that's right. Okay. And I think you've answered, and I was mixing up the two, the seeps versus leaks. The 80 gallons that I was asking questions on is regarding the seeps, and the leaks is the 100 gallons that is proposed in the new condition.
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, I think that clarifies that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Roberts, closing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The parties are fully stipulated on the proposed modifications to that are included in Exhibit 72, with a friendly amendment to remove the typographic error observed by Mr. Balak-Plan. That's in line 3 of condition number 27E, to remove the number 8 at the end of that line. The board should adopt these as stipulated to by the parties. There is certainly good cause. It is undisputed at this point that there is an odor public nuisance still ongoing and that still needs remediation. And these set of conditions, although narrow, will do work to further strengthen the order for abatement. And that is the board's work for today. The district would reiterate its concern that the board does need to hear a full status update. There is a dispute among the parties, and until we have a hearing where we can have that out, the board cannot have a full picture of what all is happening at this landfill, and has not received a full hearing to lay out the picture of what's happening at the landfill since November. You've heard a small taste. There are major substantive changes happening at this landfill. So the district respectfully requests that it set the soonest available date, which we do believe to be June 4th, for this next continued hearing to get a further and full status update and consider additional modifications to further abate this odor public nuisance. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Mr. Clerk. Do we have a hearing for Chiquita on the calendar in February?
February?
Yeah.
No, I'll double check, but the only one we have is the June 4th reserve.
No, but did we have one in February of 2025?
It was scheduled, if I can, Mr. Chair, and continued.
Mr. Clerk, for the record, do we have a?
Yeah, I had a book.
Thank you, sir. I just want to be very clear. We had a hearing on the calendar. So the hearing board is more than interested and eager to hear both sides, but I want the community folk within that area to know that there was in fact a hearing that was on calendar, was continued, and I want the clerk to be able to validate and verify that.
February 5th.
February 5th, there was a matter on the docket. So just want to be very clear for the record. Closing, Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chiquita agrees with the district that the board has good cause to adopt the proposed stipulated modifications and new conditions. We believe the testimony presented today supports those proposed changes that are agreed upon by both parties. And Chiquita looks forward to continuing to report on its progress at a future status update as requested by the hearing board at a date to be determined.
All right, good deal. Members of the hearing board, deliberation.
Can I, one of the reports indicated that SES is doing an extended study on looking at the air emissions, and that study will last through June 2025. So, and I know we want the hearing as soon as possible, June 4th. I'm not sure whether the report will be available by then, or what how fast they can, because that report will be useful in indicating the improvement event, because the earlier report, and this is showed a significant reduction in the exposure levels. So that this will further collaborate or show there's an issue. So I was wondering if Chiquita is looking at expediting it, if the date is set for June 4th to 5th, will we see the report prior to that?
My understanding was that it was a recommendation of SCS in its report submitted under condition 93, is that right? 83, excuse me. It's a recommendation that's been made, but I don't believe there's been any follow-up or adoption of that particular
Well,
date.
the study, the recommendation is for the additional study, right?
Correct.
And, it has to be agreed upon, you're saying? Or are they going to?
Trying to flip to the page.
It's, I'm trying to, and I pull like pages of it, so I can't tell you exactly which. It's on page 29. There's the scope of the Operation Air Impact Study, and I think it is the get which.
Yes, and thank you. I'm on the page now. So the
Okay.
recommendation was to continue this study for an additional 6 months.
Right.
They estimated the study would last through June 2025, depending on when AQMD approves the proposed scope. So at this point, this report was just submitted only, just very shortly before this hearing. So we have not had those further discussions with AQMD.
Wait,
So-
hold on one second, Ms. Roberts. Mr. Pollock-Kaplan, are you comfortable with?
Well, that's what I'm not that I'm not comfortable, but it'll be good if we can have the report prior to the next hearing. But if it's not possible, then, it doesn't happen. We can have a
Ms.
follow-up.
Roberts?
So the reason we're asking for a June 4th date is because we haven't discussed that first report. So we think it's premature to wait to have a hearing until you have a supplemental to that report when you haven't even heard testimony about this report. I understand it is included as a declaration. But we have not substantively talked about the conclusions of that. And we think that's the first step. And, to the extent that there's a supplemental to their report, and the hearing board continually holds hearings. So that the June hearing would not be the last one, certainly, but you should hear the first report first.
Okay, I agree. I thought we were going to get testimony today, but we're not. Okay. Okay. So that was a comment I had. I can find a good cause to grant the modification as proposed, the minor modification, that is before us in Exhibit 72.
No problem. Any other comments from members of the hearing board? Okay, I'd like to move forward. First of all, let me just quickly add to the record the exhibits for which were not called on 8/17/2024. That's August 17, 2024. And so the clerk wanted me to simply add these to the record. Petitioner's Exhibit 55, Charter Proposed Stipulated Modifications for August South Coast AQMD hearing, August 9th, 2024. Exhibit 56, photographs of leachate treatment operations, June 21, 2024. 57. Exhibit 57, revised charter proposed stipulated modifications for August South Coast AQMD hearing, August 14, 2024. Condition 50, Exhibit 58, Condition 1B, odor surveillance map. Condition Exhibit 59, chart of contested proposed modifications, August 15, 2024. Exhibit 60, community monitoring data corrected. Exhibit 61, photographs of leachate spill incident, August 15, 2024. Exhibit 62, revised chart of proposed stipulated modifications for August South Coast AQMD hearing. And Exhibit 63, stipulated proposed findings. That being entered into the record, are we in good order, sir? Very well. I'd like to entertain a motion in the matter of facility ID number 119219, case number 6177-4. I move that we find good cause to grant the request for modification as set forth in the proposed findings and decision Exhibit 72, and set a hearing for June 4th, 2025. Is there a second? Been properly moved by Ali and second by Dr. Abraham. Any further question or discussion on that motion? Mr. Pearman?
Just to add that they are stipulated language in the motion.
Yes. Mr. Clerk, note that accordingly, my good friend. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, Dr. Abraham.
Aye.
Mr. Balakapalan.
Aye.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta. I believe I might have lost her. Mr. Pearman.
Aye.
Ali votes in the affirmative. The matter is hereby approved 4 with 1 being absent. We see you all on June 4th and we're off the record. Ms. Morgan, I saw you had, are you good?
I was just asking, I think we can go off the record, but if we could set a second day for the hearing in June?
Well, but will we need the second or can we go with June?
I think it
The
depends.
district agrees that a second day might be very well needed.
Okay, so then so we have June 4th ready to go.
And the 5th, I was unavailable.
Yeah, so why don't we go June 11th? Okay, no. June 18th?
Sorry, June
June
18th?
18th? Okay. Okay, very well. June 11th. June 11th.
We have an attorney conflict on June 11th,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately.
Okay. Then why don't we look at?
Well, we just don't want to wait until, because then everything else is gonna fill up, yeah. Is there nothing like the 10th or the 12th?
We have a conflict that we can't avoid on that week, but we've got,
How about the 18th?
we can have several of our witnesses available on the 18th. We have one with a difficult schedule that is available on the 24th. If the,
Well, I'm with Ms. Roberts, but I don't want to drag this all the way to July because then we're back to where we initially started. So
Understood.
I'd rather we go the 4th and then we go the 18th.
okay,
If we can take that person on the 4th, then we can move the rest of the 18th if we're in good order.
Did you say there was not a police on?
No, Valley Plain, then we take the 11th, I'm sorry.
okay. Would it be possible to do like 2 half days? I'm just concerned that we won't even get through this all in 2 days, to be honest.
So what do you mean 2 half days?
Well, if we could take some witnesses on the 18th, we could take additional witnesses on the 24th, and I know we could have everyone from our side covered in those 3 days.
Yeah, but not the 4th.
We,
Okay, so hold on. She says the
24th.
you said the 4th and then you said the,
The 4th, you said the 18th, we have several witnesses available on the 18th.
can we take half on the 4th and half on the 18th?
How many witnesses will the district have?
Yeah, the district will make that work to do the 4th and the 18th.
The district is insatiable, so I believe we ought to quench their thirst and let's make sure we can handle the 4th.
Valley Plain.
Is on for the 18th.
So we're gonna go the 11th.
We have a,
Can't. Okay, so then what about the 17th?
we could do the 17th.
Okay, so we can work out the logistics, meaning we need to do another pre-hearing conference, et cetera.
Sure.
Oh, okay, 17th? Okay, so we're locked and loaded.
4th and the 17th to
4th and
confirm?
the 17th,
Okay.
4th and the 17th. And again, I would ask, my only concern, and we're doing this, but we're still going through the process. We're providing a tremendous amount of declarations, but then we're testifying. So if we can get as much as we can via declaration, then we can simply not engage that level of testimony because we already have it in writing. So I'll give an example, what my good friend, Mr. Bolton stated, we have. So again, if you want people to testify to what they've written, I mean, it's an exhibit, right? So I want to be able to be very conscious and cognizant of time, but also there's intricacies and nuances, and I want the public to be able to follow along. Okay, Miss Roberts? Had a comment? Okay. So are we good to go? Okay, folks, we are hereby adjourned and off the record at 12:31 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. So when do you head back to Baltimore?
Tomorrow morning.